Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting preview for this week's Bermuda Championship. It looks super windy out there, definitely going to impact play. So here in this video, going to break down how we're going to be approaching this slate, a few of my key stats, my modeling out there for Port Royal Golf Club. Then afterwards, a look at the DFS and betting side of things, some of my top pieces of exposure out here for this week. So a lot to go through. Let's start off with, first off, a look at the golf course and how I'm modeling for this terrible weather event. As mentioned during the introduction, this week is going to be extremely blustery out there. You're talking about 30, even 40 mile an hour wind gusts that'll be coming through. It's not even just for 1 or 2 days. It looks like 3, maybe even all 4 rounds at this event are going to be played in extremely difficult scoring conditions. So while we can look at this modeling over here, try and make some assumptions based on what we've seen on the past, I think this year, 2024, we have to treat a little bit differently than what we've done historically. So this modeling going to be used a little bit less by me this week. So a few things to know about Port Royal is it is not an overly long golf course. In fact, one of the shortest tracks that we see on the entire year. So your approach buckets are normally coming from 150 yards and in. A few longer iron shots, particularly on the par 3s, but those par 4s are going to have a wedge in hand most times. Usually putting matters a lot at this track because it can be a little bit of a birdie fest, playing to over a 2 under par scoring average. With the wind kicking up this year, it is going to be a much different dynamic. So while putting, birdie or better percentage historically are the kind of things we're looking here at Port Royal, I'm considering this modeling a little bit less just because it is going to be so different. I think shots gained windy conditions, shots gained hard conditions, bogey avoidance, even shots gained around the green, which you can see in this model isn't even included. This is just our normal course model out here for Port Royal. I don't think we can use this that much this week because the things that are going to matter are keeping par on the card, and your winning score could be something around 5, maybe 10 under par this week. So if you're looking at some of the course history for Port Royal, I think you're going to get thrown off in a few different directions. It's not going to play nearly as easy as what it has over the last 3-4 years. And your birdie better percentage, I don't think that's going to be all that important this week. It's great out there for your fantasy scoring, but in terms of going out there top 5ing or winning this event, it's going to be much more about keeping that par on the scorecard. So even these comp courses that we would normally look at, I don't think are that important for a week like this. So we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time over here in the modeling. It is still having an impact on projections, all of that sort of stuff, but it's not going to be as big a factor as what it typically would. What I'm more so worrying about out there for my DFS and my betting exposure are how players play in these super hard conditions. I want grinders. I want people that historically have played well when conditions get super windy, and that is what's far more important for me on a week like this compared to birdie or better percentage. You're off the tee, even your approach play at this kind of event, you kind of got to throw all of that into the meat grinder this week and just take some of these grinders out there. So first option is going to be a Sheamus Power towards the top end of the board. If you go onto any of the golf databases out there, you sort by windy conditions, Sheamus Power is going to be towards the top of those power rankings. Maybe it's because he's used to the conditions being from Ireland, obviously has his heritage over there from overseas, plays a lot of European Tour golf as well, so has experience playing in more windy conditions than what we see here in the United States. But he's $10,500, and he's also playing some of the best golf of anybody in the field. So you take a look at the last 12 measured rounds, his form is about as solid as it can be heading in, gaining across all 4 stat categories. He's doing it on approach and with the putter, which historically is exactly what we're looking for at Port Royal. Maybe a little bit less important this week just because of the kind of weather that we're going to get, but he really fits that weather narrative as well. He's got that low ball flight, a lot of experience in playing in these conditions, and it's not just narrative based there with Sheamus Power. The data backs it up as well. Whether you're going on the rabbit hole, whether you're going Fantasy National, it really doesn't matter what database you use to sort it by weather, you're going to see Sheamus Power towards the top. So these weather stats can be a little bit noisy. That's why I think it's a really good idea to go to different databases, try and find that data for yourself. A few other ones that I'm working with, Bet the Number, by the way, hopefully going to be adding some weather stuff here in 2025, but Sheamus Power is towards the top of all those power rankings. You take a look at some of his best performances this year. They've been at some of the harder events out there in the PGA Tour. You play him with form. He's also won at this event before, so the event history, as mentioned, maybe a little bit less important this time around. But you can take a look at the event history and you can see why there's a little bit of upside for wanting to get to Sheamus here. So I'm playing him out there in lineups. He's going to be my main core play towards the top end of the board. And compared to some of the other guys in these rankings, he's by far the best win player. You've got Mackenzie Hughes, who tends to struggle when you have these kind of conditions. Matt McNeely, Ben Griffin are about average at best when it comes comes to those rankings. So give me the guy that has been the best grinder over his career and has the same, if not better, form than those other options. Before we go into the rest of our core play, some of the value plays towards the bottom, do want to remind you where you can find all of these projections and spreadsheets for yourself. That, of course, is over there on my Patreon page. So go ahead, check out the link in the description of the video to go out there and join that. On there, I've got all my projections, modeling, key stats that you see over there to the right. And as we get closer to lock, I'm going to start to adjust the projections to account for some of the weather edge, whether it's the AM side, PM side, getting the better side of the draw, or just starting to incorporate that around the green and bogey avoidance a little bit more as well. So if you want projections that are database, they're accounting for course fit, weather, all of that before lock, make sure to check out my Patreon page. Again, link in the description of the video to go out there and join. And it's only $15 a month to go out there and join the DFS tier. Not only gives you the main slate stuff I'm doing every single week, but also all the showdown content for rounds 2 through 4. So you get 4 spreadsheets every single week, my entire player pool, projections, ownership, all done individually out there for showdown. So make sure to check it out if you guys haven't already. Next up, though, for our next core play, and it's worth noting, guys, on these outrights, even over there in Showdown, DFS out there round 1, don't marry yourself to any plays. I am not betting any outrights until I know what the weather situation looks like, because if there's going to be an edge there with Thursday, Friday, this kind of weather, this wacky 30, 40 miles an hour kind of situation could lead to like a stroke and a half, a 2-stroke advantage. So I think if you're playing any outrights right now, you're playing with fire, because if they end up getting on the wrong side of the draw, you could be drawing dead before the event even starts. So I would just pump the brakes a little bit, even in DFS. Let's say that there is a massive weather edge between the two waves. If these kind of players, Sheamus, Berger, whoever we talk about here for plays, if they're on the wrong side of the draw, I am not going to be using them this week. So that is not always the case. There's a lot of times where I'll still play some of my top players there on a Thursday if they're in the bad wave. This week, just because it is such an extreme example of the weather, I would not recommend doing that. So this is definitely something you're going to want to stay on top of. Next play, though, is going to be Daniel Berger, who historically has been one of the better wind players that we've had in the entire industry. If you take a look at the shots gained, windy conditions, windy AF over there on Fantasy National, he's a top 5 player in the field. So he's just one of the better options that you have in the field to begin with. If you've been here in the fall swing, I've talked him up for literally every single event so far, and he's really yet to fail us. It's been a lot of solid finishes. He's had a few top 10s mixed in there as well. You can see he's gaining over 1.4 shots gained per round over his last 12 rounds, which isn't like he's gaining 3 strokes per round. He hasn't really had that top 3, top 5 quite yet, but he's playing the kind of golf where if he even just slightly improves with the putter or on approach, he's going to take that from a top 25 to that top 10, top 5, or maybe even a win out there. So I like Daniel Berger at these windy sort of golf courses. You've seen him play well at the Honda Classic and some of the more difficult conditions down there in South Florida, especially when it's played hard down there. They've had a few years where it's gone to like 15 under par or better winning. He hasn't been as big a factor on those kind of years, where Daniel Berger has been borderline dominant down there at the Honda Classic. I've gone to see a lot of it in person, so it's partially why he's one of my favorite players, by the way. See him tear apart a hard golf course like PGA National. It's hard not to want to root for the guy going forward. If he can take apart a windy, difficult PGA National, he can take on a windy golf course there in Bermuda. So he's $8,900. This golf course isn't nearly as tricky as what you have down here in South Florida. $8,900. He is starting to get more expensive. Last week he was only $7,900, so he's starting to get a lot more respect out there from the pricing algorithm. But at the same time, that should keep the ownership a little bit lower than it was before. When he was at the top end of the 7K range, it was really easy to click him in as your third, maybe even your fourth man into any given lineup. Now that he's here at $8,900, he's still going to get played. People love getting exposure to these 8, 9K players, but maybe it'll be a little bit lower than it should be because he's not that massive misprice like we've had for the last few events. So I think at DFS, a lot of that's going to come down to ownership, but I am cautiously optimistic here with Daniel Berger that he's not going to be mega chalky just because of the $8,900 price. So you can see over there, number 6 in recent form ranking, just like Sheamus Power, doing it in a very sustainable fashion. If you take a look at the shots gained metrics, you can see he's into the green across all 4 stat categories. His quote-unquote worst category would be around the green, which historically has been one of his strengths, one of the best short game players that we have on the PGA Tour. So yeah, give me some Daniel Berger at what could be a grinder's fest. And if you need a grinder, you need somebody to go out there, shoot even par, maybe -1, and gain a bunch of strokes to the field. That's Daniel Berger. He can definitely do that for you. He's maybe not the hottest putter these days. His putter has definitely fallen off from his heydays a few years ago, but he's still more than capable of ball striking the ever-living shit out of the golf ball. And then the last core play we're going to go with, then we're going to have 3 values towards the bottom end of the board. It's going to be Brendon Todd here at $8,500. And his form isn't as stellar as these top few players. But once again, if you take a look at the windy conditions over there on databases, he's going to be a top 10, top 15 player in the field. And what you like about Brendon Todd is that from the logic standpoint, just thinking about his type of game, it makes perfect sense why he'd play well at windy golf courses. Main reason for that is he is a low spin player. You don't know about Brendon Todd, he has one of the lowest club head speeds of anyone on the PGA Tour, but at the same time, he also gets a ton of rollout with his drives, even his irons, his long irons into par 5s, that kind of thing, because he is an extremely low spin player. Part of that is the golf ball that he uses, also because he hits the ball so low, and he plays similar style golf to me. Like, I don't swing my fullest out there when I play golf, and I have a lot better success out there in windy conditions because my ball is not getting completely destroyed by the wind when it's out there spinning. If you hit a spinny golf ball into the wind, you're going to have zero chance at keeping that ball on line. Brendon Todd plays that regardless of golf course, and when you get him on a windy golf course like this, it's not like he has to adjust. He already has that low spin flight. He already has that low flighted golf ball to begin with, which really has made him a stalwart at these kind of events. So just like the top 2 plays, this isn't even narrative based. I mean, you can add that on top of it like we just did, but the actual stats, the numbers back all of that up as well. So when you can find a narrative and you can find some stats to back up a play in these kind of conditions, you're going to get me onto a player like Brendon Todd. So the event shots gained metrics aren't that great. If you go down here, you'll see why he's only $8,500. Most notably, losing about a stroke per round on approach, which is definitely a massive red flag. But we're talking about a fall series event. We're talking about a small, wacky sample size out there for Brendon Todd. Maybe this kind of windy event, this kind of absolute carnage, could be really good for his game out there. So I'm going to be playing him. He'll be way low owned over here in the 8K range, but I could see Daniel Berger being like 15, maybe even a little bit over 15% ownership when it's all said and done. I would imagine that Brendon Todd has a good chance to be under that 10% ownership mark. So if you're looking for a leverage play here in the 8K range, you're trying to find somebody towards the middle to top end of the pricing to try and get a little bit different to the field, Brendon Todd could be that guy, and must I remind you, he is a past winner at this event as well. So you can see there 5 years ago, was able to get into the winner's circle here at Port Royal. Different set of conditions to what they're going to see this time around, but I think still something that you can look at out there in your analysis. And now for some of our value plays. So we're going a little bit further down the board, and this is where you're going to save some salary, and really we're going to try and get some leverage. And just like the top few plays, Grayson Sig, a pretty solid player out there in windy conditions. But what I really like about Sig is the form is coming into shape as well. So you take a look at the last 12 measured rounds for Grayson, you can see he's gaining across all 4 categories. He's a really good short game player that is almost always going to be well into the positive. Truly one of the best around the green players that we have in the world. Off the tee, he's a little bit sporadic. He's a more accurate than long player off the tee. That's kind of what we want at this style golf course. We've seen him play well at the RSM Classic. We've seen him play well at the RBC Heritage. And if you take a look at these comp courses, it's like all the tracks where Grayson Sig is top 10s. And I think there's one reason for it. The guy is not long off the tee. He's not a very good off the tee player. But you put him on a golf course that's super short like this, that is more about fairway and in, he's going to have a chance to top 5, top 10. And these fall series events, a lot of these courses play that same way. I mean, Shriners, even some of like the Black Desert Classic stuff, like it was a course where it was more about fairway and in to go out there and win that event. I don't think it's a surprise that he's having one of his best stretches of golf for quite some time. So you can see he's number 6 in the field when it comes to the recent form ranking. And you can see on Bermuda grass, he's a much better putter historically than what you've seen for his 24 round baseline. So I like that for Sig. I like the low ball flight as well, kind of like a Brendon Todd. He's got that same kind of ball flight going. Now they're both Sea Island guys over there at the RSM Classic. That's what will be next week, of course, out there in the PGA Tour. I might actually go to that event next week, so stay tuned for that if we have some on-course info out there for the RSM. But yeah, Grayson Sig, Brendon Todd, it's their style of golf. It's why they live in Sea Island. It's why they play those style of golf courses. Would not surprise me to see those two Sea Island guys towards the top end of the board. We've also got Rio Hune as a play this week, another shorter player off the tee that has a low ball flight. And if you take a look at the win stats, he's in the top 30 of most databases when it comes to those kind of conditions. So $7,500, he's played pretty well over there on the European Tour. Even in terms of just regular old shots gained, you can see he's number 37 in the field. And long term, the more you zoom out on Rio, the better the stats become. You can see that long term, he's the number 7 player in the field when it comes to course fit ranking. And just to show you why that's the case, if we go to the last 24 rounds, he's gaining with his ball striking. And while the putter might not be the greatest over his last 24 rounds, you put him on Bermuda grass and he's gaining nearly 0.4 strokes per round, which is 0.75 shots better per round than what you have for that baseline. So he's been striping it. That's why the stats are going to love him at this kind of event. Honestly, any event. If you have good ball striking stats, my model is going to love you. But the reason why this course in particular is a really good buy low spot on Royo is because he's a really good putter on Bermuda grass. So I like that. I like the fact that he's been good on some of those windy, tough conditions. And if you look at it from the narrative angle, low ball flight, not a really high ball speed player. I think that helps him with these kind of conditions. And you've seen it backed up in some of the databases too. And then the last play we're going to go through here is going to be Peter Malnati at $6,700. And he's probably the best example of a player that I like this week. Short off the tee, but he's got that low ball flight that we're hoping for in these kind of conditions. And more importantly, he's got the attitude down. You saw him over there at the Pebble Beach a few years ago when conditions really sucked. He got into contention that week. In fact, he shot -7 in 40-mile-an-hour winds. He's $6,700. He's not the kind of guy that's going to make a bogey and get completely down on himself. He's going to smile when he makes a bogey out there. And I think there's something to be had for that. Like some of these fiery guys like a Toasty, some of the more aggressive players that we have out here in this field, I don't know if I feel very good about them at this event. I could see them getting a little bit hot under their collar, maybe getting a little bit too aggressive on their next hole and then having a little bit of a blow up. This is the complete opposite sort of player, right? You're talking about a guy here who can make a bogey. He's just going to shake it off, go to the next hole like nothing happened. And that's what you need to have success at these kind of events. And just like every other player that we've talked about, you go to those databases and you take a look at the shots gained metrics on tough, windy conditions, and he's going to be in that top half of the field. So the form is not great. He's number 97 in my modeling. I mean, like I said, the modeling a little bit less important this week. That's why I'll use somebody like Malnati as a core play, but he's also played well at this event. So you go down to his event history. It's going to play a little bit differently this year, but T37, top 10 there 3 years ago, and then a T21 back there, and I believe that was 2021 when he had that T21. That's not a bad track record for Malnati. He's normally extremely inconsistent, misses more cuts than he makes out there in the PGA Tour at times, but he's made all 3 cuts at this golf course, and I just think from the narrative perspective, especially the weather that we're getting at this event, I think this is the best chance that he's ever had, right? And he's made the cut in every trip to Port Royal. So I'll definitely play him. I mean, he's won this year at the Valspar Championship. Also got to see that one in person. That was mightily unexpected, if I'll say, him going out there and winning at the Copperhead course. This track, it wouldn't surprise me as much. So, if he's going to be like 200 to 1 to win this event, just like the other guys, right? I'm not betting anyone outright until we see the weather conditions closer to lock. But if we get a really good number on him, I'll take a shot out there from the outright perspective as well. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the DFS and betting preview. Before you hopping out of here, go ahead and smash that like button for me and also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come. That of course will include our RSM Classic content out there for next week, showdown for rounds 2 through 4, and our weekly live stream Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, going over all the last second info there before lock. So if you have any questions for this week, make sure to bring it to the live stream there on Wednesday. Also go ahead, subscribe so you don't miss any of the showdown stuff over the weekend. Hopefully we can make this one to remember, one into the profit out there from each perspective, and best of luck out there with whatever you guys are getting to. On top of hitting the like button, also go ahead and comment down below who you guys have as your winner for this week. And if you can get the winner of the golf tournament, you will win a free month of my Patreon page. That of course is where I'm posting all the projections that you see throughout my content. As I said, everything on there is uncensored for my Patreon members. That includes my modeling for every single player in the field, my projections, player pool, all of that sort of jazz over there on the Patreon page. Make sure to go ahead, enter the giveaway. Again, give me the winner for this week, and all you have to do is get the winner to go out there and win that. So it'll be a first come, first serve basis. Once a player is taken once, they cannot be taken again. So go ahead, claim your player down below before anyone else goes out there and steals your option. But that's all we've got out here for this event. So best of luck, as mentioned before. I appreciate all the support here on the channel. And let's go out there and crush this week.